Welcome. This is the University of Waterloo campus final for Math the System 2021. To begin with, just before we go in, one housekeeping detail to be clear on is if you could please, as a viewer, as has already been shared in the chat, switch to speaker view as soon as possible. So that would be just navigating to the view button on the upper right-hand corner of your screen and selecting speaker view from the options that appear in the drop-down list. So thank you to everyone who has availed themselves for this occasion. We really appreciate your presence and participation in this event, and we hope that you'll be able to walk away from this feeling both stimulated and inspired. For those not necessarily familiar with Math the System, in a nutshell, it is a global systems thinking competition which encourages students from across the world to think really deeply through some of the most pressing social and environmental challenges currently confronting us as a planet. And yeah, along with this, Math the System is spearheaded by Oxford University at the global level and coordinated by Math the System Canada at a national level. Here at a local level, at the University of Waterloo, it is spearheaded by the Kindred Credit Union Centre for Peace Advancement. My name is Thomas Fraser, and I am the campus lead for this year's competition at the University of Waterloo. So as all of us are no doubt aware, the past year has been unprecedented on multiple fronts, from devastating natural and human-driven disasters to seismic shifts in the social ecology of our time. Caught in the grip of a global pandemic and the stark fault lines it has revealed, the future is far from certain. And along with this future comes the question of the past that binds us and that has brought us to where we are, the past that so often eludes us but also inexorably shapes us. So situating ourselves within this nexus of time and place, I'd like to take this opportunity before we go forward to acknowledge that the University of Waterloo and the Kindred Credit Union Centre for Peace Advancement are situated on the Haldimand Tract, land promised to the Six Nations Confederacy in 1784, running 10 kilometers deep on each side of the Grand River, within the territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. As a newly landed immigrant in this rich and contested territory, with shared roots in settler colonial history, and as a representative of the Center for Peace Advancement today, I'd like to invite us all to reflect on the unique legacies shaping the living systems of our present, as well as the limits and possibilities that beckon us forward together. So, perhaps at no time has a deeply systems-informed perspective attuned to the radical interdependence of all things being more pressing or urgent. And that's why we're here today, to just witness and celebrate the contributions of some of the brightest young minds that we have among us here at the University of Waterloo, applying themselves to the most challenging problems that we're confronting today. With that being said, I'd also like to just thank all of the stakeholders that have contributed to this program, including all of the students who registered and participated in the competition this year. We had over 50 teams applying at the University of Waterloo this year, and we had just incredible contributions and submissions coming through. So thank you to all the students for your very hard and inspiring work. I'd like to thank the finalists who are here with us today as well. 6 teams selected out of 35 submissions from the original 50+ teams who are here as finalists today. Congratulations on making it this far, and I'm looking forward to showcasing what you have put together. Then to all of the judges who have assisted in assessing and ranking all of the submissions and helping us get to this point in the process, thank you for your time and energy and all the contributions you've made. To our sponsors and partners, both within and beyond the University of Waterloo, we also thank you for everything that you've contributed to this process. So just in terms of how this is going to unfold, after this brief introduction, which will soon end, we will go into a live streaming of the video presentations put together by the 6 finalist teams of this year's competition, after which the final prizes will be announced. So without further ado, we will now transition into the live streaming of the presentations. Once again, I do hope that you all find this enjoyable, stimulating, and inspiring. Thanks again for being here. Here we go. First up, we have University of Waterloo Food Insecurity. And this team consists of Victoria Lumax, Blair Ashford, and Jen Collins.
Hello, my name is Blair Ashford, and I'm a Master's of Peace and Conflict Studies student at Conor Gabriel University College.
My name is Victoria Lumax, and I'm a third-year undergraduate student studying Peace and Conflict Studies and English.
My name is Jen Collins, and I'm majoring in Peace and Conflict Studies and Business, and I also work with university students at the Dawn for the past 4 years. Together, our experiences has made us interested in the math system topic of University of Waterloo student food insecurity. As students head off from high school into university and are trying to figure things out on their own, food is a necessity that often looms over them. On the screen are quotes from real Canadian students and their struggles with food insecurity. Feelings of inadequacy, poverty, stress, and guilt burden today's students. While food insecurity affects more than just students, the normalization of the starving student brings into question if there are larger forces, a system, at play. The problem is of particular interest because of the following research conclusions. Firstly, a Canadian study showed that 4 in 10 students are food insecure. Additionally, students have similar food insecurity rates of vulnerable populations, such as single mothers. Finally, co-op and non-co-op students use UW Food Bank services to the same extent. We decided to focus in on UW because we have personal experiences at this school and with its services, but also the way that Waterloo boasts that its co-op program brings students heightened financial stability would make it seem like this should be the last school to have student struggles with food insecurity, although this is not the case. Before we progress further, it's important to define what food insecurity is. First, it's about availability, example, supply and demand. It's about nutrition, such as dietary and cultural needs, food skills. Third, it's about ability, location, and cost. Fourth, it's about what's socially acceptable without social stigma. And finally, it's about the limitation or uncertainty of these factors. You do not have to be completely starving to be food insecure.
The majority of research focuses on money, or the lack thereof, as the source of food insecurity. However, our work indicates at least 5 main stocks required for food security: time, food, money, knowledge and skill, and equipment. These 5 stocks are exacerbated by students' main goal of success in school. The desire to get good grades limits time available to students and minimizes other options for food security, such as a part-time job, or even going home to make a meal. This slide situates students as a member of the community at large. Of note here is that the government funds university and students through OSAP, but shortfall of government funding to the university will be made up through increased fees and tuitions. The second thing to note is that students are transient members of the community, and as such may not have the awareness of programs available, or that the community programs are not created with student users in mind. Government support to food insecurity are generally poverty abatement programs. However, the majority of these programs are not available for students. For example, employment insurance is available to other seasonal workers, but students cannot claim employment insurance after working for a summer or co-op term. The main governmental support to students is through OSAP, but this comes in as a lump sum at the beginning of the term, reinforcing the episodic nature of student food insecurity. One potential solution is to pay out OSAP on a monthly basis, assisting students with their budgeting. There are a lot of food stores near the University of Waterloo campus of various levels of quality and affordability, so the solution is not necessarily more or better stores. However, when it comes to asset-based community development, students, due to their transient nature as community members, have additional challenges to helping themselves. For example, while there is a food bank run by the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association, WUSA, management of the food is run by different students every school year. Lessons learned are not necessarily passed on, nor are long-term solutions initiated. Community kitchens had the potential to assist students in making prepared food to be frozen and consumed at a later date.
In summary, the system has multiple layers of influence ranging from visible events to invisible mental models. On the surface, we can look at how many students are insecure and how they seek help. If we go just a bit deeper, we can see the contributing factors, patterns in who is food insecure, and common timelines between students that affect food insecurity. Below that is the structures that support these events and patterns. These are consistent in reinforcing rhythms, positions, and processes. Lastly, underpinning the entire system is mental models. The paradigms that control student food insecurity, normalize, stereotype, and make negative assumptions about students' role, worth, and understandings. The mental models of student food insecurity make it seem natural for students to be starving, seen first as economic assets, and be a population unworthy of charity. These are troubling beliefs that harm students and leave them with little power. For increased impact, our first conclusion was that expanding goals of the system is critical. One gap is a lack of food skills and literacy. Students are thrust into university with little knowledge of how to cook or shop for themselves. This is where a key lever comes in, university policy and practice that fosters both academic and personal wellness. Universities provide fragmented support. Writing support and mental health support are considered essential, but food service is only a small student-run service with minimal tracking. As well, there are few ways to learn cooking skills or cook on campus. Another gap is a lack of understanding around students' paradoxical role in the community. While the community depends on them for economic benefits, they do not get to participate in or use the resources of the community. Since students have minimal power, political power, and are transient members, there's little influence they have on what resources are available. In response, the system needs to add new rules that bound and add accountability. City planning and business policy need to align with student needs in order for student food insecurity to improve. Universities, businesses, and governments need to work together to make sure that this group is protected. This final key gap we've identified requires the deepest lever and is the most powerful lever to shifting the system. The key gap for students, which is reflective of a wider gap, is the perceptions that define worthy and unworthy charity recipients. Food insecure students don't necessarily fit the stereotype of a needy, hungry person. They may come from a wealthy upbringing, they're gaining value by going to school, and their suffering is episodic and inconsistent. For increased impact, charitable initiatives and marketing need to be structured to serve need over worthy recipients. This will improve with increased research.
The solution to student food insecurity is not more money. While there are lots of good reasons to make and keep post-secondary educations affordable, these efforts will not stop food insecurity. Universities and students need not be in adversarial roles. Universities benefit when students perform well, and a hungry student is not a good student. Past the level of the university, we need to consider charitable causes based on the impact of the affected, not their worthiness. Hunger is hunger. Finally, food insecurity is unlikely to cause a crisis. A food insecure student is more likely to just drop out and be unnoticed by their absence. But this lack of a visible crisis does not mean we should not take action on this pervasive problem.
Thank you for listening. We would love to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much once again to that team for your amazing contribution. We really appreciate all of the time, energy, and effort that went into it. And next up, we have our next team, COVID-19 and the opioid epidemic in Canada.
All right, hello everyone and welcome judges. My team and I are honored to participate in this year's local Map the System competition. For a brief introduction, our topic is COVID-19 and the opioid epidemic. So we know opioid addiction and overdoses have been a prominent issue in Canada, but we decided to examine how the current pandemic has led to the increase of opioid-related overdoses and deaths. So to start off, I'll quickly introduce the team and I'll go through a brief roadmap of our presentation. So our team, we are a group of third-year global business and digital art students studying at the University of Waterloo's Stratford School of Interaction Design. My name is Hannah Wong. This is Rachel Kale, Bailey Zayer, Megan Morse, and Troy Jensen. Now that we've got everyone introduced, we're going to start off with a more in-depth introduction to our topic and a quick definition of opioids. Then we'll move on to highlighting some key trends in our research. We'll show off our maps and identify some responses to the issue, and then finally Megan will conclude and end us off with some takeaways.
So from 2016 to 2020, Canada has experienced opioid toxicity deaths upward of 19,335 and continues to rise in the face of adversity in COVID-19. The opioid crisis has led to an unprecedented number of problems that have resulted in health issues, legal issues, wrongful use of prescribed medicine, and a handful of other complications. It is through these problems that the opioid crisis has become more prominent with the evolving COVID-19 pandemic, leading to over 40 overdoses that occurred in just 7 days in Waterloo region, including 6 deaths by opioid overdose in February of 2021. Furthermore, in places where the demographic is larger, such as Toronto, can experience numbers like this, however, within a 24-hour time span. Canada is currently ranked the second highest country for opioid use next to the United States, and from July 2017 to June 2018, there was 1,337 confirmed opioid-related deaths in Ontario. Only in Ontario. This included prescribed drugs, heroin, illicit manufactured substances that may have been laced with other active ingredients. However, with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Canada is seeing more access to opioid drug abuse through lockdowns, easier access to prescribed medicine, and depression. In the first 15 weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a 38.2% increase in opioid-related deaths in Ontario compared to the 15 weeks immediately prior. It is clear that Canada continues to suffer from opioid usage, however, is currently experiencing one of the worst episodes ever due to this pandemic. It is important that the government and citizens do not allow the pandemic to overshadow this crisis, as it has taken many lives over many years.
All right, thanks Bailey. So opioids are a class of psychoactive drugs. The term opioid refers to any group of compounds and chemicals that share characteristics of opium, a substance dating back to around 3,400 BC that comes from the liquid collected from an unripe seed of the opium poppy plant. The Sumerians in Mesopotamia were amongst the first people identified to have cultivated the poppy plant, and they spread it throughout the ancient world to every major civilization in Europe and Asia. So this is what led them to be used in healthcare. Opioids are known for their paralyzing effect, therefore making them medications that are primarily used to treat pain. When taken properly, prescription opioids can help patients manage that pain. Examples of these opioids include fentanyl, morphine, oxycodone, and hydromorphone. With opioids being so effective in their use, in the late 1990s, pharmaceutical companies reassured the medical community that these patients would not become addicted to prescription opioids, and healthcare providers began to prescribe them at greater rates. So now I'm going to move on to defining addiction. Opioid addiction is defined by a group of signs, symptoms, and behaviors that indicate a person is both physically and psychologically dependent on the substance. So there are 4 types of opioid use, and not all of them are classified as addiction. The first is beneficial use. It has positive health and social side effects. It usually occurs when medication is prescribed, the user takes the intended dose, and is closely monitored by healthcare professionals to reduce risks. The next is problematic use. This harms an individual, their family, friends, or society. The third is casual or non-problematic use. And so, like the name, it's casual, recreational, and has suitable side effects, but is not yet an outright addiction. And finally, we have chronic dependence. This is habitual and compulsive. The user knowingly continues with the negative side effects, no matter who gets affected, even if it's themselves. And so, opioid addiction involves more than just this physical dependence. For example, a patient who is prescribed opioids may experience withdrawal symptoms when they stop taking the medication, but withdrawal is not the same as addiction. Opioid addiction also involves the psychological dependence. This means that the drug is so central to the person's life that the need to keep using becomes a craving or compulsion, even if the person knows that using it is harmful.
Awesome. Now that we know what opioids are and what opioid addiction is, I really just wanted to go over and highlight some key facts and trends that we think are both eye-opening and very important. So the first key stat that I really like to share with you is from April to June of 2020, there were 1,628 opioid-related deaths in Canada, with 96% of those being accidental, which is a 50% increase from the previous 3 months. And the next stat I'd like to share with you is that 3 out of 4 opioid-related deaths actually had nobody present to intervene or help. And lastly, an important trend that we noticed in the opioid epidemic is that pre-COVID-19, 70% of opioid-related deaths were men, with that number rising to 78% today. Next, I just wanted to quickly go over our map of various stakeholders associated with the opioid epidemic. With the map focusing on both past and present opioid users, we have grouped these stakeholders into 6 categories, being government, crime and justice, community, education, healthcare and treatment, and lastly, mental models, beliefs and values. And from there, the map then branches off from each stakeholder into different contributing factors, which are all categorized by color to show the positive, negative, or neutral impact that factor has on the opioid user.
Based on our research, we created a number of systems maps to show how this issue is connected, which I'll be presenting over the next few slides. This map shows how a variety of interconnected factors are contributing to a rise in opioid-related overdoses and deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic in Ontario. It maps out how the main factors that we identified in our research, including physical distancing measures, cancellation of services, border closure, disruption of income, and mental health issues, are building off of each other and resulting in unintended consequences for people who use opioids. You may have noticed a reinforcing feedback loop on the right side of our map. As COVID-19 cases rise and physical distancing measures are implemented, many people experience a disruption of income or lose their jobs, and as a result may deal with home insecurity or loss and be forced to use shelters or community housing. These services are increasingly crowded during the pandemic, increasing the risk of COVID-19 infection and therefore increasing the number of COVID-19 cases again. This feedback loop is particularly impactful and dangerous for people who use opioids, as our research indicated that material deprivation and symptoms associated with infection with COVID-19 are highly correlated with an increased risk of opioid overdose and death for people who use these substances. In this causes diagram, we chose to dive deeper into one of the main influential factors that we had identified, cancellation and reduction of services, which includes things like harm reduction and consumption sites, walk-in clinics, and pharmacies, to name a few. This diagram looks at why cancellation of services is occurring, what contributed to that decision-making, what it's causing, and some of the external factors that are exacerbating its effects. Stepping back to take a look at the wider context of this problem helped us understand its scope and implications in our problem landscape. The solutions landscape of our research comes from existing and suggested responses from various local, provincial, and national sources, including research networks and healthcare professionals. Access to services and resources includes widespread adoption of naloxone, incorporating services at temporary residences like hotels, and PPE in harm reduction kits. Prioritization of services means making harm reduction and treatment services essential so they can be accessed during the pandemic. Prescription planning includes prescribing lower-risk opioids at low dosage for short periods of time. A drug early warning and response system would assess the impacts of external factors on people who use substances and help inform policy. And finally, decriminalization is seen as a way to transform this issue from a criminal justice issue into a health issue, and erase harmful stigma around substance use for people who use opioids. Many of the proposed solutions that we found in our research fit well with existing gaps in the system that we identified.
While the opioid crisis in Ontario exists, and has been already worsening before the effects of COVID-19, this phenomena has accelerated opioid-related overdoses and deaths substantially. The pandemic and its related symptoms have exposed further vulnerabilities and inequalities around this issue and decreased the effectiveness of existing aids, like harm reduction and treatment services for the problem. The pandemic may be over before we can properly address what's been exposed systematically, but what we have learned will hopefully help us react better to the changing landscape of the opioid crisis into the future and implement adaptive responses. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. The floor is now open for questions.
All right. And thank you to that team as well for your amazing contribution. Really appreciate all of that great insight into a very important problem. So next on our agenda, we have work-life conflict in Canada. And this team consists of Rayane Zarzada, Lena Manuel, Layal Hanuti, and Shishong Zhao.
Each individual has many roles they take on in life. Each title, whether it's employee, business owner, spouse, parent, or friend, comes with its demands on our time, energy, and health. Oftentimes, these commitments cause a work-life conflict when the demands exceed the time we can give to each area of our lives. To dig deeper into the existing work-life conflict in Canada, we use the iceberg system thinking model. Underlying the current events, such as stressful work environment, overtime and paid working, and living below the poverty line, we discovered a number of patterns of behavior, supporting structures, and mental models. Classifying these findings at different levels of the iceberg model helped us to uncover the root causes for the existence of the status quo. The work-life conflict contains 4 key stakeholders, including the individual, the family, the organization, and the government. We created a system map to illustrate how different stakeholders interact to maintain the status quo and reinforce each other's behaviors. The high level of role overload in the existing state not only increases the probability of reporting burnout, but also results in increased financial costs associated with it. To create the work-life conflict system map, we classified the impacts of the status quo on different aspects of working and living separately. After investigating how organizational culture, career, and social identity can lead to working overtime, we tried to show the impacts of this work overload on individual, family, and social relationships with friends. This classification provided us with a valuable insight on finding the existing gaps and suggesting the possible levers of change. The root causes that contribute to an imbalanced work-life structure are family obligations, job, and self-expectations. An increase in living expenses, the need to pay off debt and save money, often drive individuals to work more to keep up with the demands of life. The competitive job market force leads to lack of job security. Many times, job applicants list skills like working hard and coping with stress as positive qualities to impress hiring agencies. Finally, the cultural stigma associated with proving ourselves through our work leads to individuals setting high standards and striving to maintain a certain lifestyle. The global pandemic changed the way we work, blurring the lines of what is already a hazy divide between work and life balance. In 2020, employment declined by more than 1 million within Canada. The increase in unemployment led people to work multiple jobs just to supplement their lost income. Also, the financial burdens people are currently facing have led to an increase in stress and anxiety. Although working from home has helped balance family life, it has also made it difficult for many people to separate themselves from work, which generates a 24/7 work ethic. The 3 areas of conflict are role overload, work-to-family interference, and family-to-work interference. Solutions to help solve these conflicts are building supportive management teams, creating family-oriented policies that support employees, and allowing for flexibility in work schedules to help balance family and life needs. The gaps that currently exist are the lack of government funding, lack of job security, stressful and rigid work environments, and workplace inequality. Support from the government and from the organizations will help balance and fill these voids. As part of the solution, we recommend 3 areas of improvement. Socially, it's important to be mindful of personal relationships and nurture them. Governments should fund NGOs and independent organizations that advocate for workplace rights while having the media support and raise awareness on gender inequality in the workplace. Economically, working less would allow people to have more time to spend more money on travel, shopping, and participating in activities boosting the economy. This would also save companies money while increasing employee productivity. Employees would be more satisfied with their jobs, so organizations would retain employees and avoid training costs. When it comes to our health, we need to understand our mental health could also affect our physical health. Stress and fatigue lead to diabetes, cardiovascular conditions, and high blood pressure. Employee wellness programs and health awareness campaigns would help employees avoid unhealthy habits such as smoking, alcohol consumption, and physical inactivity due to stress and overwork to take better care of themselves. Globally, there are a lot of countries who have implemented strategies we've mentioned and been successful in helping their employees reach a balance between life and work. Microsoft Japan tested out a 4-day work week and saw a 40% increase in productivity, happier employees along with less time off, and a reduction in workspace costs. The Netherlands, Norway, and Denmark averaged 33 hours per week, resulting in less stress and more happiness, while a firm in New Zealand reduced their work hours and saw improvements in employee creativity and attendance. In our opinion, work-life balance for Canadians means an increase in productivity, better mental health and physical health, and job satisfaction, along with more quality time spent with family and friends. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you also to this team for this amazing contribution, and something I suspect is close to many of our experience right now. So on to the next presentation. This is vaccine hesitancy in Canada. And the teammates here are Delia Lynn, Jose Maurice, and Lauren Forrest. Here we go.
We acknowledge that we are speaking from the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinabeg, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Track, the land promised to the Six Nations, which runs 10 kilometers deep on each side of the Grand River.
COVID-19 has translated into debilitating health, economic, and social impacts across the globe. Canada is no exception. As Canada struggles to contain the outbreak, vaccine hesitancy, defined as delay in acceptance or refusal of vaccination despite availability of services, threatens progress and actively works against the return to normalcy. Alarmingly, Stats Canada reports a drop in vaccine acceptance rates since July 2020. 49% of Canadians report they are not very likely to get vaccinated, while 20% would outright reject it. This far from universal willingness to accept a COVID-19 vaccine is a serious cause for concern, as researchers agree that approximately 70% must be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. The COVID-19 pandemic has had destructive effects on the health of Canadians, paralyzed the Canadian economy, imposed astronomical healthcare costs to the taxpayer, heightened unemployment while driving a reduction in GDP. Nevertheless, we found that COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy is but the tip of the iceberg. It is essential to note that while numerous marginalized and vulnerable communities exist within Canada, we focus on the patterns reinforcing vaccine hesitancy in the Indigenous population. This decision was guided by research and follows the dominant Canadian discourse while working to increase well-being and reconciliation with Indigenous communities. Ironically, Canada's previous success with immunization programs has led to newer generations being less familiar with the risks of vaccine-preventable diseases, thereby shifting their concern from the threat of the disease to the perceived risks of the vaccine themselves. This suggests that a mere existence of a COVID-19 vaccine is insufficient in determining uptake. From this discovery, we realized we had to dive deeper. No individual cause of vaccine hesitancy is responsible for its existence. Rather, it is a product of a complex, dynamic, and multidimensional system. As such, we use systems analysis to understand the social norms, historical context, institutional structures, and external pressures that perpetuate cycles of vaccine hesitancy in Canada. Over the next few minutes, we will talk through the iceberg model, systems map, and identify gaps and leverage points, and conclude with lessons learned. First, we identified an alarming pattern in our iceberg model that highlights a history of vaccine hesitancy. Using childhood immunization rates as an indicator of a country's basic preventable health services, UNICEF ranked Canada as second to last, specifically 28th out of 29 high-income countries evaluated. Next, we shaped our systems map around the key mental models we've identified in our iceberg model.
For our systems map, we use the software Kumu to illustrate the underlying structures driving Canadian vaccine hesitancy. Observed in blue are the interacting variables within the primary system of vaccine hesitancy. We then identified two subsystems revealing the unintended consequences of stay-at-home orders, found here in orange, with the second subsystem highlighting the prevalence of vaccine hesitancy among Indigenous communities, in yellow. These subsystems include 3 reinforcing feedback loops and 3 balancing feedback loops. As our first focal point, we looked at the underlying causes behind the creation of doubt among Canadians and found that misinformation and anti-vaccination discourse have greater reach and influence than pro-vaccine communications, especially given the unprecedented speed of vaccine development. This feedback loop can be read as follows. The greater the perceived risks of vaccines, the lower the perceived quality of vaccine, which increases the spread of vaccine misinformation, looping back into greater perceived risks of COVID-19 vaccines. We then found that the impact of the pandemic extends well beyond COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy. Evidence suggests that healthcare professionals are the most trusted sources of vaccine information, with in-person contact proven to be one of the most effective ways to fight vaccine hesitancy. With this in mind, the limited healthcare capacity and stay-at-home orders have not only disrupted routine immunizations, but have also further reduced the perceived risk of vaccine-preventable diseases, leading to an overall reduction in vaccine coverage rates and putting Canada at significant risk of other vaccine-preventable outbreaks. Diving deeper, given Canada's history of colonialism, ongoing neo-colonial policies, and systemic oppression, it is no surprise that vaccine hesitancy is prevailing among Indigenous communities. This distrust is rooted in Canada's history of medical experiments performed on Indigenous peoples without their consent. Identified by the government as a priority group due to disproportionate vulnerability to COVID-19, Canada is failing to approach the vaccine rollout with a cultural lens, feeding into a dangerous narrative and leaving Indigenous communities questioning whether history is reproducing itself. Overall, continued COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy will inhibit Canada from attaining the necessary coverage needed to achieve herd immunity, threatening the country's ability to flatten the curve and dragging out the severe ramifications of the pandemic.
We have identified 2 critical gaps in actionable levers to achieve greater collective impact and systemic change. First, there is a gap in the knowledge and understanding of vaccines, resulting from the insufficient reactionary interventions and a lack of proactive strategies. As of now, the primary approach to managing vaccine hesitancy occurs after the virus has spread, with these interventions often overshadowed by contradictory information in the media. Additionally, there's a severe lack of long-term and ongoing vaccine education. To create opportunities for increased learning and positive change, we suggest building platforms to foster greater collaboration across institutions in support of cohesive messaging during a crisis. Additionally, this platform will allow for long-term vaccine education, thereby building resilience in advance of a crisis. Second, there is limited cultural sensitivity of marginalized communities in the Canadian vaccine rollout plan, amplifying vaccine hesitancy. Importantly, policymakers have failed to understand the unique nature of vaccine hesitancy in Indigenous communities despite their vulnerability to the virus and overrepresentation in active cases. To leverage this gap, it is essential to adopt the Indigenous theory of two-eyed seeing, coined by knowledge keeper Albert Marshall, by using the insights of Western science in combination with the traditional wisdom of Indigenous knowledge to provide a depth of understanding that neither can achieve alone. Using a localized, decentralized, and decolonized approach, vaccine communication must be disseminated through Indigenous leaders, tailored to Indigenous culture, and health professionals must be educated in the history and culture of communities before vaccination begins. Our systems analysis has challenged our assumptions that vaccine hesitancy can be addressed retroactively and revealed the complexity of variables leading people to be hesitant. Historic and cultural factors are fundamental, and a blanket approach to vaccine hesitancy will exclude already marginalized segments of the population, increasing their vulnerability. Surprisingly, our systems map revealed the limited understanding of the unintended consequences of mitigative policies such as stay-at-home orders and social distancing on vaccine hesitancy. As these policies could result in Canada becoming vulnerable to vaccine-preventable outbreaks, vaccine hesitancy is not only a threat to Canadians today, but also in the future. We recognize that COVID-19 will not be the world's last health emergency, and there is an urgent need to build sustainable emergency preparedness in advance of the next impact. Our hope is that these interventions could fill in the gaps between the challenges and existing solutions to vaccine hesitancy in Canada. Importantly, our systems analysis can be used as a global model for other countries when applied to their local context and variables. Before COVID-19 fades into history, we must seize this momentum to learn from our mistakes and redesign our global system to build societal resilience in the face of the inevitable future pandemic. This will be no easy task, as each and every one of us has a role to play to establish collective humanity. Public and private institutions must take a people before profit approach, while individuals must answer the call to be a global citizen. Our actions today will determine our future. As disease has no borders, we must transcend our perception that we stand in isolation from one another. Failure to look beyond our own interests will delay the world's victory against COVID-19, and part of that responsibility includes the duty to get vaccinated. Only through empathy, transparency, and collective action can we ensure that no one is left behind and that there is a sustainable future for all. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for sharing, for that great contribution. Once again, brilliant insights and much appreciated to this team. Next, we have a project focused on child marriage, girls in Kenya. Bushra Fanos, Alice Sandiford, and Rose Omgech. And without further ado, here we go.
Growing in a small village in Kenya, where most parents had to choose between giving their daughters education and marrying them off in exchange of bride price. I'm glad my parents chose to pay for my education, and I've done the same for my children. This is where my passion and my motivation for girls and women's empowerment comes from, and hence the challenge topic on child marriages in Kenya. My name is Rose Omgech, an MPACS graduate student at the University of Waterloo.
My name is Bushra Fanos, a Peace and Conflict Studies student at the undergraduate program in the University of Waterloo.
My name is Alice Sandiford, also in Peace and Conflict Studies at University of Waterloo at the undergraduate level.
So in this presentation, we will be talking about the problem being child marriage, some of the root causes, gaps to fill, and then levers of change. To start with, we will look at the iceberg module. Using this iceberg module, I will highlight the main drivers of child marriages in Kenya. In the event layer, we see school dropouts, teenage pregnancies, and gender-based violence. Why do we see this? Because of the patterns and trends whereby 1 in every 4 girls get married before the age of 18 years in Kenya. This makes the prevalence rate of child marriage at 23%. And why the high rate? Mainly because of the lack of law and policy enforcement. And what makes it worse is because of the assumptions that exist, such as the patriarchal beliefs, social stigma, and harmful cultural practices, such as the female genital mutilation, which we will be referring to as FGM, which normalizes child marriage.
So just looking deeper at the problem, first at the institutional level, we have a lack of access to education. So Kenya has done strong work in offering primary and secondary education, but girls are still exiting schools at high rates. There's a cycle that involves undereducated women getting married and not finishing school, and then having girl babies that grow up and get married and then don't finish school. There's also little to no education on the rights that these girls have not to be forced into marriage. Next, a lack of sexual education. Girls don't understand their own bodies and they can't grasp how they may become pregnant through intercourse. This can lead to teenage pregnancy, which I'll discuss in just a second. Next, policy gaps. Though there are laws such as the Marriage Act that prohibit marriage under the age of 18, these are rarely enforced due to a lack of an accountability mechanism and corruption and resistance from cultural and religious leaders. A common manifestation of this is the use and acceptance of false IDs to register marriages. And finally, poverty. Many families can't afford to put girls through school due to the high poverty rate of 36.1% per the World Bank. Families can receive money or livestock in exchange for a girl, and many opt for this route as a way to avoid succumbing to poverty and to avoid the economic burden of providing for her any longer. An example of a livestock exchange would be in Turkana County, 300 goats, 70 cows, and several camels. At the community level, we have teenage pregnancy. This is done to preserve the family honor. So once a girl gets pregnant, she gets married to preserve that honor. Next, cultural norms. So getting married young is the norm. It's an achievement, even as Teresa Ayoko, one of our interviewees, explained. Customary laws are more prevalent in Kenyan society than the codified ones are. So cultural norms directly lead to what we've pinpointed as essentially the catalyst under this broader cultural norms category, that being female genital mutilation, FGM. So this involves cutting part of the female genitalia for non-therapeutic reasons. Beyond the physical and emotional harm that this can cause, FGM is considered a rite of passage, and it actually signals being ready for marriage.
There exist efforts in place towards ending child marriage. First is about the laws. There exists Marriage Act of 2014, the Sexual Offense Act, and the Anti-FGM of 2011. All these, however, need stronger enforcement. Two, there is need for policy enforcement as well. For example, the free access to primary and secondary education needs to be enhanced, especially in remote areas. Sex education, there only exists informal sexual and reproductive health information. Therefore, there will be need to embed this in school curriculum. Four, there is community advocacy. Awareness and education programs are happening at the community, though do not directly target the perpetrators, which includes the cultural leaders, FGM initiators, and some religious leaders. Five, there is civil society organization efforts, which conduct awareness and advocacy programs as well, such as rescue centers that provide refuge for these girls. However, they lack sustained funding. And lastly, there are national and global efforts towards this, such as anti-FGM declarations supported by UNICEF that aims at working with the cultural leaders to end FGM. Campaigns such as Girls Not Bright is a global campaign that is aimed at working with NGOs to ensure that there is an end to child marriage and as well as to FGM. And last but not least, Sustainable Development Goals. There is a focus with Equality Now, which is also a global organization that currently works in 5 counties in Kenya to ensure end of FGM, child marriage, as well as gender-based violence.
We have identified 4 main gaps in the issue of child marriage. The first one being the lack of legal enforcement of the law and the long court processes. As we learned earlier, there are already existing laws that prevent the practice of early child marriage and the practice of FGM. But due to the lack of resources to enforce the law, due to legal loopholes, and also due to lack of punishments, the laws continue to not be taken seriously. The court processes are also very long and lengthy, thus preventing a lot of people from going through that route. A suggestion for this issue can be to target those directly involved in the issue, such as the health workers who perform the FGM, women who encourage and pressure young girls to get married, and especially older men who are getting married to younger girls. And in addition to further coordination among government agencies, offering legal aid to those who wish to pursue the court process. Another gap is inadequate education surrounding sexual and reproductive health. As mentioned earlier, many in these communities, parents, and especially the girls themselves, are not fully aware of their bodies, and therefore the risks involved with being sexually active at an early age, being pregnant at an early age, and most importantly, having the procedure of FGM. Enforcing educational programs and having comprehensive sexuality education as part of the school curriculum would be beneficial. In 2013, the Kenyan government signed a declaration in which it committed to scaling up comprehensive rights based sexuality education beginning in primary school, which is a big step towards solving the issue of lack of sexual education. A third gap is existing stigma in the community and getting married at a certain age and having gone through the procedure of FGM. This is a big one, as culture play a big role when it comes to this issue. Not following cultural norms can lead to being an outcast in one's community. And so working on spreading awareness and normalizing not getting married young and not having gone through the practice of FGM is important. Educating and empowering girls and children to advocate for themselves is important as well. And also encouraging campaigns like the one mentioned before, Girls Not Brides one. And then finally, religious leaders have a big influence in these communities. And so bringing educational programs through them that would encourage these religious organizations to use their influence to advocate for the abandonment of FGM and child marriage in these communities can be very efficient. Religious leaders are the one usually officiating marriages and even accepting fake birth certificates to proceed with the marriage. So targeting them and ensuring that the law is followed through them is important.
Now, just looking at some key takeaways here. So, of course, child marriage was our issue of focus, and we found the female genital mutilation to be the catalyst of the problem due to the overarching driver, which is customs. And perhaps the most salient conclusion that we came to is that a law is not the end to the fight, but rather the effect of that law is the end. And as we've seen throughout this research, we have laws in place, the Kenyan government has laws in place, and they're simply not being enforced. So, next steps. First, we have to bridge the gap. We have to ensure there are accountability mechanisms in place to ensure the policy is being upheld. Next, educate the girls on the rights that they have, the parents on their duties to ensure girls are able to achieve a full education, and educate the communities on their impact. And further, mining that culture, leveraging these community leaders to help with discrepancies between customary versus codified law. Thank you for listening.
Thank you once again to this team for their incredible contribution. And next, we will be going on to precarious conditions for foreign labor in Malaysian palm oil plantations. This team is Mohammed Rahim, Uwamazino, Odigbo, and Leah Fior.
Hello, Leah Zeno and I will focus on the problem of foreign labor issues in Malaysian palm oil plantations, a critical point in the world supply of palm oil. Palm oil, which is used in over half the products in any supermarket, and Malaysia, which produces more than 30% of the world's palm oil. The laborers in the plantations were facing desperate conditions even before the COVID crisis, and now the weak links in the system protecting workers are being even more exposed despite considerable efforts over the past decade to improve conditions. With experience in teaching, banking, and auditing, we recognize our biases and strengths in analyzing this critical topic. We understand that there is no single explanation for the precarious situation that many labor find themselves in, but instead is a culmination of issues with the entire process and the system under which their livelihoods depend. The understanding of the problem is colored by our experiences dealing with multiple obstacles to helping develop sustainability in our lives, especially with regard to developing better consumption and waste habits. The issue of labor in palm oil production is a difficult one considering barriers to developing impact through world markets. There has been government intervention in the recruitment and transfer of labor with mixed results. There are agreements such as RSPO to develop sustainable palm oil which have come under significant criticism. Considering the key sources of knowledge from the issue and our experiences, we can surmise that a process that involves all key players would be the best way to approach this issue. The world market for palm oil starts with the demand by large multinational companies and has various interconnecting pieces that each warrant a close examination for societal and environmental impact. The plantations in Malaysia constitute a critical part of the world agricultural infrastructure geared towards the production and distribution of the palm fruit to oil mills. The oil mills in turn convert the raw commodity into a form usable to make myriad consumer products. Our focus will be on the labor practices that are prevalent throughout the value chain in Malaysia, with particular emphasis on foreign labor working in various functions.
The increase in the number of people working in the Malaysian plantations is related to growing demand for palm oil. The demand for increasing yields of palm oil is leading to the need for additional plantations and oil mills that process the harvest. This in turn leads to an increasing number of laborers working on various aspects of the planting, growing, harvesting, and then the processing of palm fruit. An average consumer does not get to see the welfare of the human factor behind the palm oil ingredients in the many products they buy. One goal of our research is to identify leverage points for change to improve the labor conditions in the Malaysian palm oil industry. We use a causal loop diagram consisting of labor-related elements specific to Malaysia, represented by light green nodes, and global market forces elements, represented by light purple nodes. Reading the map from left to right, the chain of events leading to the conditions for plantation labor starts from deprived communities in countries like Nepal and Bangladesh that experience a low employment rate, which drives employment-related migration to Malaysia, where they become part of the foreign workforce as both documented and undocumented workers. Some barriers to international employment can be relieved through labor market development, such as migration policies leading to more transparency for workers seeking opportunities and enhanced freedom of association, a solution that could ultimately bring greater unionization to represent the workers' voices. As the global demand for products using palm oil continues to rise, worker well-being needs to be prioritized as a matter of human rights and plantation productivity. The ways the problem is likely to evolve is threefold: an increase in the use of technology, greater government oversight, and increased involvement of international organizations. While greater use of technology in the harvesting and processing of palm oil increases operating efficiencies, it could lead to a decline in the number of workers needed. This could in turn have the unintended consequence of a greater and more expensive struggle for fewer positions on the plantations. The other development, greater involvement of government agencies, could reduce the severity of corruption in the recruitment and transfer of labor to the plantations, if and only if the government involvement itself is properly monitored and carefully assessed without undue burden to laborers and employers. Lastly, an increased involvement of international organizations sanctioned by the primary buyers to facilitate the monitoring and reporting with consequences for non-compliance. This creates a reinforcing feedback loop and exposes a leverage point for intervention within the existing system.
Drawing from the causal loop diagram, we identify three critical points of intervention within the existing system. One of these points of intervention is to increase the number of certified plantations while increasing the quality of the certification process and RSPO standards for foreign labor recruitment and welfare. According to Daniela Meadows, this is leverage point number 12, numbers. Although a least effective way to change the system structure, this could allow RSPO to strengthen plantation workers' protection and decrease the impact of exploitation in the system, hence reducing unsustainable production practices. A more effective point of intervention is to increase the flow of information in the system, which is leverage point number 6. This can help to create global awareness on label-specific standards, using this information to influence third-party decisions, both from the buying companies and the consumers of palm oil products. To further support this effort, the creation of Palm Oil Plantation Workers Union can be used to change the system structure, which is leverage point number 4. This area of intervention will address current plantation practices and lead to the development of collective solutions to protect the rights of plantation workers while catering to their well-being. Overall, the value chain in Malaysia's palm oil plantation system follows a shift in the burden archetype, which extricates the existing problems and further creates new problems. We recognize the input gaps in the Malaysian palm oil industry and its production system. Challenges persist within plantation labor practices impacting migrant workers, and existing solutions are insufficient to address root causes. To create systemic change, improving reporting standards is important for buyer and third-party involvement. To address this, RSPO needs to be strengthened to develop a more dynamic framework to monitor palm oil plantations and reduce the precarious working conditions in Malaysia. By reporting through organizational sustainability lens, socially responsible production patterns can be practiced in Malaysia, and the protection of labor rights can be achieved by promoting safe and secure working environments for all workers, including migrant workers. All this can contribute to the goal of SDG 8 in Malaysia, which is decent work and economic growth. In conclusion, through our research of existing challenges and solutions within the Malaysian palm oil industry, we have learned that impact should be applied through consistent and timely incremental changes to provide greater outcomes within the existing system and enhance efforts put forward by key stakeholders in Malaysia and globally. We conducted our research holistically, recognizing that proposed solutions applied in Malaysia needs to be replicated in other regions, given that palm oil is being produced around the globe. Thank you.
Awesome, and thank you for another amazing contribution. Once again, really important problems and issues that are being spotlighted for us here. And same goes for all of the teams whose presentations have been showcased here today, from the University of Waterloo Student Food Insecurity Crisis, right up to child marriage, precarious conditions of labor, vaccine hesitancy, work-life conflict, and COVID-19 and the opioid epidemic. You name it, it's here. And once again, just to spotlight that we had 50 plus teams at the beginning of this entire process. And yeah, ultimately it boiled down to 35 submissions and these 6 finalists whose work you have seen here today. So at this point, we can go forward to the next section of the showcase, which is to spotlight our prize winners who have been ranked and selected based on a rigorous evaluation process. And firstly, drum rolls, I would like to announce or invite the announcement of the 3rd prize for this year's round of Map the System at the University of Waterloo. And in order to do so, I just want to spotlight the sponsor for this prize of $500 from the Waterloo Institute for Complexity and Innovation. This is a research hub that promotes the rigorous transdisciplinary study of innovation within and the resilience and beneficial transformation of the complex adaptive systems essential to human well-being. And representing the Waterloo Institute for Complexity and Innovation today is Vanessa Schweizer, who is the director of the organization. Vanessa, please take it away and make your announcement.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction, Thomas. I just wanted to furthermore add to say that Wiki is very excited to support Map the System and this particular competition, because complexity is all about systems and their emergent processes and outcomes. Complexity cannot be understood or harnessed without understanding systems first and foremost. So we are very pleased to support the teams and the competition organizers who have worked so hard to showcase the importance of systems thinking. And so to further narrow the field to the top prize winners, I am pleased to announce that the 3rd place prize and $500 goes to the team focused on vaccine hesitancy in Canada. The team members include Jose Maurice, Delia Lynn, and Lauren Forrest.
Great, thank you so much, Vanessa, for that announcement, and how exciting for the team. Congratulations on your achievement and how far you've come in the competition so far. Let this be a testament to the value of your contribution today. Next up, we of course have 2nd prize, this time sponsored by, and let me just see why my slide is not working here. There you go. The University of Waterloo Council for Responsible Innovation and Technology. So it's 2nd place with a tagline of $1,000, and representing the Waterloo Council for Responsible Innovation and Technology today is Jason LaJoy. And by the way, this organization is an interdisciplinary group of students, faculty, and staff that work collaboratively to advance understanding, education, and policy in areas related to ethics, technology, and societal impact. So with that being said, Jason, if you are ready, please go ahead and make your announcement.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. The council is honored to be involved in this competition, and just to give you a bit of background about what responsible innovation even is, it involves understanding the ethical and societal implications of new technologies, processes, and research, and especially how systems change in response to such innovations. So given the multidisciplinary nature of this research, it is critical that researchers are able to apply systems level thinking to map the macro and the micro issues across domains and to chart connections and levers of change. And the finalists in the Map the System competition have all demonstrated the systems thinking approaches that are required to efficiently and responsibly address the complex sociocultural, economic, and environmental impacts of innovation. And the Council for Responsible Innovation and Technology is therefore proud to support the competition with this second place prize for $1,000, which I am pleased to award to the team focused on the University of Waterloo food insecurity, with team members including Blair Ashford, Jen Collins, and Victoria Lumix. So congratulations.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations to the team once again. Let it be a testament to the quality and value of the contribution you've made. And thanks so much for all of your work and effort throughout this entire process up till now. So next, of course, we have a new prize, actually. This might come as a bit of a surprise to some. This is called the PAX Award, and it is a $1,000 prize, which is being awarded specifically to Map the System participants in peace and conflict studies in this year's competition. It is sponsored by OWL Practice, which is an organization that provides comprehensive practice management solutions designed to empower psychologists, social workers, and therapists. So, representing OWL Practice today is Andrew Sloss, founder and CEO of OWL Practice. And when you're ready, please go ahead and make your announcement, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. It's great for me to be here today with you. OWL Practice is very happy to be supporting the Map the System competition, and there's two reasons why we are. The first is that we're big believers in system thinking to drive innovation. We've seen the power of this working in our own organization, where we're focused on challenges related to mental health. Our mission is to enable mental wellness through therapists. In order to do that, we really have to have what we call a learning engine in our organization. This means we have to listen, we have to learn with our customers, innovate, try new things all the time. And I think the Map the System philosophy is something we're inherently using every day in what we do, and I know leads to great things for businesses and innovation in general. The second reason is that my observation is that we are here to contribute in some way, and all of us choose where we decide to work or spend our time and energy each day. And as it relates to peace, I think we often don't prioritize a pursuit of peace in whatever innovation we're seeking. So I'm very excited to be supporting the PAX Student Award and the contribution from that perspective as well. So we are very happy to sponsor this award, and we wanted to announce the winner. The team focused on the University of Waterloo food insecurity storage, and their team members Blair, Jen, and Victoria. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Andrew. And to the team, once again, congratulations on the achievement. And yeah, let this be a testament, as I said, to every team of the value and significance of your contribution today. Thank you for what you have put forward in this space. And next, of course, we have the grand finale, so to speak, and that is the first place prize, as well as the selection that will determine who will represent the University of Waterloo at the upcoming Canadian finals for Map the System 2021. 1. Drum roll, please. Doesn't sound like a drum, I guess, but anyway, we'll make it do. So at this point, the first place prize, which is also at the value of $2,000, is being sponsored by Kindred Credit Union, the inspiration partner behind the Center for Peace Advancement at Conrad Grebel University College at the University of Waterloo. Their purpose is to provide cooperative banking that connects values and faith with finances, inspiring peaceful, just, and prosperous communities. Representing Kindred Credit Union today is Ian Thomas, the CEO of the organization. And so, Ian, as soon as you're ready, please go ahead and make your grand announcement.
Thanks very much, Thomas, and thanks very much for everybody who has been participating and sharing today. It was just, I mean, this last 90 minutes has been very sort of inspiring and thought-provoking, and this is Kindred's second year being involved in Map the System, and it's my second year as well. And I think one of the things that is why we're so excited to be involved. One is in terms of what Thomas sort of shared around our purpose. And I think from that, our purpose has to be delivered in partnership. It's just not something that we can continue on or do on our own. So this is just such a natural extension of a partnership. And the other one is Kindred's Community Inspiration Framework, which really focuses on some of the topics around that have been covered off today: climate action, food security, safe and affordable housing. But it's not just the topics themselves, but actually it's the when Kindred sort of seeks to get involved, and one of the areas is around this upstream, which is around sort of addressing early and preventative and thoughtful ways around complex issues facing our community. So just a really great sort of partnership and great initiative around the systems thinking and addressing some of these complex issues. So without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to announce the first place prize, along with the $2,000 and the opportunity to represent the University of Waterloo at Map the System Canada. And the recipient team goes to the team that's focused on precarious conditions for the foreign labor in Malaysian palm oil plantations. The team members include Leah Fior, Zino Odibo, and Muhammad Asanur Rahim. So congratulations to you all. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian, for facilitating that announcement. And wow, a huge congratulations to this team for this fantastic achievement. Once again, let it be a testament to the value, significance, and relevance of the contribution that you have put forth today and throughout this entire process. So inspired and proud to have you representing us at the Canadian finals, and really excited to see what the future might hold, not only for the first place team, but for all of the finalists here today, and indeed for all of the teams and students who made submissions throughout the process and who will be going on to do amazing things, undoubtedly. And yeah, so that being said, next up, I would just like to remind everyone of how to stay connected as Map the System unfolds from here into the future. So this is the local campus final that we've just hosted in the showcase, but it's just one step in a series of steps that are still unfolding as time progresses. So next in the process will be the Canadian final, a national final, where of course our first place team will be representing the University of Waterloo. And after that, depending on how things go, they might be able to get the chance to go on to the global final that is spearheaded by Oxford globally. So that's an amazing opportunity. It's very exciting for us, and I have no doubt for the team as well. And there are many opportunities that will come out of this process. So to stay connected, Please feel free to visit the Center for Peace Advancement website, which I've listed on this slide here, uwaterloo.ca/Center Peace Advancement, separated by hyphens. And that's that one. Then also, if you'd like to stay connected with us through a periodic newsletter updated every month, you can either visit the link that's listed below, or I've included a QR code that you could quickly scan with your phone. It will take you directly to the registration page for the Center for Peace Advancement newsletter, where you will receive regular updates on the progress of the University of Waterloo team and the broader Map the System process. And finally, also, if you would like to connect with us on social media and you happen to be on Twitter, where you'll also see regular updates and spotlights around Map the System, please connect with the CPA or Center for Peace Advancement Twitter page. The handle is Grable CPA, as listed on the slide before you. So with all of that being said, once again, I'd like to sincerely thank all of the students who participated in this year's round of the competition. Thank you to the finalists as well for your great work. Thank you to the judges who helped facilitate this entire process and made the selection possible. Thank you to the generous sponsors for being so committed to your purposes and for being here today to support these teams in their inspiring endeavors and to also make possible the generosity that you have put forth today. And also to our various partners, once again, both within the University of Waterloo and beyond, thank you so much for the contributions you've made and for this inspiring outcome. That being said, peace to you all, keep well, and looking forward to what the future holds.